being the kind of war commuters we were, okay, it was a lot easier on us than it was on our families. The 30 minutes we were subject to enemy fire was intense. There's no question about that. But out of a given day, one mission a day primarily, we would be exposed to enemy fire maybe for 30 minutes. And then we'd come back and sleep on clean sheets and watch movies and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't a continual fear, okay? It wasn't being continually uptight. You were uptight for 30 minutes and that was it. Think about your family back home though. They didn't know when that 30 minutes was. They had no idea. And they were on pins, well, I don't know whether they were on pins and needles or not, but they were worried, but they didn't know when to get worried. They were on point 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I think it was a lot harder on them than it was on us. The effect that it had on me was probably negligible. I had a great time in the wartime military. It was fun. In addition to being scary,
right? It
was fun. I mean, if you crashed an airplane, a one-liner to the Bureau of Naval Personnel, scratch serial number so and so and so and so, and shoot it off. You know, if you did that in the peacetime Navy, you had a folder about that thick with paper saying why it was pilot error, and you get your wings jerked. Now, that's the difference between wartime and peacetime. I hated the peacetime Navy. I couldn't wait to get out. I thought I would really enjoy it. I was stationed down here in Jacksonville, Florida, flying the A-7 Corsair. And that plane's still in the fleet today. But they made us all instructors because we all had our wings, we all had a lot of combat time, but we were all stupid. We had no idea what we were doing. And the A-7 was brand new. The A-7 was brand new, and we scattered A-7s all over Florida. It had its bugs, but we didn't do it any favors either. And I got involved in all that, and everybody was a stickler for rules about this and rules about that, and it just took all the fun out of it.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't fun anymore. So it didn't take me long to get my head on straight saying I was going to get out. I always did intend to get out, though.
Yeah.
It was a 5-year hookup for me. My brother who was killed, he was career.
How'd that affect you? Did that give you some fear about it going in at all?
No.
Yeah.
No, it didn't. It bothered my mother.
Sure.
It really did. And I don't know about my dad. He's kind of one of the stony, stoic guys, you know. When he died, I went to the funeral and watched all that, but I was already committed. I couldn't call them up and say, "Hold up, I don't want to do this anymore." So it really didn't influence me that much one way or the other. It didn't, and that sounds very callous, but again, you're invincible. That's not going to happen to you. And he was killed in a routine training mission.
I think too, probably looking back on that, you experienced loss a lot during that period of time in your life.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
All you guys did who were involved in the war in some way. And you mentioned too the scary and the fun. That kind of goes hand in hand sometimes. The adrenaline of the scary part makes it fun. You know?
Yeah, it really. It's a rush.
Yeah, unless you've been there, it's hard to understand how that works. But
that's right.
Yeah.
But that's true. Mm-hmm. You've characterized it exactly right. It just. Yes, it's tense. Yes, it's traumatic. Yes, but it can be a real trip. I mean, it can be really good. I watched a lieutenant commander who I flew with, who I really had a lot of respect for. They called him Stretch Tucker. Mm-hmm. Stretch Tucker was a Texan, and he was about 6. I don't know how he ever fit in the cockpit. He was about 6'4", and he'd big guy. His hands, I got big hands, but his hands would dwarf me. And Stretch was on a mission with me one day, and he was off to my left. He was leading a section over here, and I was coming in over here on a flak suppression run. We would shoot at the guns to keep the guns from shooting at the bombers. Okay, we were flak suppressors. And all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, but the more I think about it, the more I think Stretch hit a steel cable that was tethering a helium balloon to the ground, because his airplane, he was like this 1 second, and the next second he was going around. And I never saw any flak, I never saw anything like that over there, and it killed him immediately. I choose to believe that. The human body is just not meant to do that. But I always thought of Stretch as invincible. He was just a man's man, you know. And there he was, he did. And I thought, golly, it makes you think. Makes you think. There were a lot of people over there, Josh, that turned their wings in.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure.
They didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
They didn't want to do it. One of them was a guy, I won't use his name, Charlie. Mm-hmm. Charlie was his first name. He was a massive guy. I mean, he was a bodybuilder extraordinaire. I mean, he just a man's man. He got over there and flew 2 combat missions, said, I'm through, I quit. He didn't want any part of it. And here we were sitting back in the States, and somebody told us that. God, if Charlie can't stand it, what do we think we're going to do? Right. You know, it makes you think. It really does. But there was another one, Joe, I won't say Joe's last name, but he shot down a MiG. Mm-hmm. He was one of the MiG killers. And that's an honor. I mean, you know, that gets you a Silver Star. But Joe got back to the States, and after talking to his wife, he said, I'm through. Yeah. He quit. He didn't want any part of it. Yeah. So there were those that quit.
What was the biggest? You got the Distinguished Flying Cross. Is that what you got?
Distinguished Flying Cross was as high as I got. Yeah. And I was proud of that.
Heck yeah.
That was as a result of the run on Hanoi.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That was where that was awarded. That was a special trip.
Understood. Okay. Yes, sir.
As a matter of fact, we were going. I went back in that night, but we didn't go over Hanoi. We kind of circled the fringes of Hanoi and came out again. But 2 days later, the air boss calls and says, we got to go into Hanoi again. Now I looked on the flight. I wrote the flight schedule. Mm-hmm. I looked on the flight schedule, and everybody on there had been on an Alpha strike since I had been to Hanoi. An Alpha strike was a big strike against a designated target. Everybody had been on an Alpha strike since I'd been out to Hanoi. And I remember thinking, Lord, have I got to go back there? And so I wrote my name on the flight schedule to go back to Hanoi. And the skipper was looking over my shoulder, and he said, no. Mm. And I said, what do you mean, skipper? I was looking for a way out. I said, what do you mean, skipper? He said, that's a special place. We'll forget Alpha strikes, forget going anywhere else. We don't want anybody going to Hanoi again until everybody in the squadron has been to Hanoi. And I said, okay.
Sold, yeah.
No problem. I mean, it'd be all right by me. Yeah. So it was, that was as close as I ever came to going back to Hanoi, though. Went to Haiphong, went to downtown Haiphong. On that mission, Josh, there was a little A4 bomber. Again, we were flak suppressors, going after the guns, and the bombers were going after the target. We weren't stable enough to be bombers. Okay, when a bomber, this was before the days of the Tomahawk cruise missile. We didn't bomb with pinpoint accuracy. Okay, but a bomber rolls in about 8,000 feet, and he's got to be pretty steady. He releases about 5 and pulls out about 3. And while he's in that run, he's very vulnerable. Okay, So the flak suppressors would roll in ahead of the bombers and start looking for the guns that were shooting. And we would go after the guns, okay? Now that worked pretty well, but the trouble is that not only were we flak suppressors, we were flak diverters too. If you were a gunner on the ground and you saw a bomber going in after a target a half mile away over here and you saw a plane coming directly at you, which one would you shoot at? so we got their attention pretty quick, okay? But we went into Haiphong and I saw a bomber take a hit in his run. He just got nailed. And his airplane was rolling uncontrollably. He was just going round and round. And he just upside down and back around. And he didn't get rid of his ordnance. He got hit before he released his ordnance. He didn't get rid of his ordnance, and he was losing altitude, and I happened to be there with him. And I said, get rid of your ordnance, get rid of your ordnance. And we were right over Haiphong. The next time he rolled wings level up, right side up, he pickled everything he had, and we bombed the harbor. It was horrible, and we weren't supposed to do that. But he got that got him climbing again. He got out over the ocean, ejected over the ocean, and we picked him up. He hurt his leg and spent a couple of months in the hospital, but he made it, okay. But now we had to explain the bombs in Haiphong Harbor. How do you get out of that one? And we opened up the Stars and Stripes in about 2 days, and here it was. And they blamed that bomb strike. They said a surface-to-air missile had been launched and went berserk right off the launching pad and came back down and struck the harbor. That was the story. I thought, God, there's just no truth in that stuff. You know, it was all designed to keep us happy. That's what it was, and explain the unexplainable. You know, it's crazy.